Yeah.
Listen to that. Oh, that's fantastic. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Drummers Education Connection, episode 151. Can you guys believe that? 150.
That's unbelievable.
We welcome you on the deck. Thank you for joining us. It's been a long and fun road, and we're grateful that you're all watching us. Today, I'm surrounded by three of the greatest guys in the world, three of my great brothers. We've got Jeremy Steinkohler in the Bay Area, Bart Ropley down in LA, Ontario, Chip Ritter out in Tucson. Thanks for joining us, folks. We appreciate it. And just to take care of a little business, we have a Patreon. If you want to help us keep the lights on, we'd really appreciate a little support from the Patreon. And there's all kinds of bonuses and little extras if you join us on Patreon. And let's see. Today, we got to start off our show with some good things. So, Jeremy, what's your good thing?
I got lots of good stuff, you guys. So I'm going to start with my son, Evan, who many of you know is a really accomplished jazz piano player, and he's the senior at El Cerrito High School. And, you know, the jazz ensembles at high schools go around and play these festivals where they compete against these other jazz programs from the region. And they just came in first place in their second consecutive festival. And their rhythm section won best section of the entire festival.
Wow.
And Evan was singled out to be the sole recipient of a full scholarship to the Stanford Jazz Institute for his outstanding playing.
Dang.
Woo. Yeah, really cool. Super proud of him. It was awesome.
Wow.
And we're leaving on the day after tomorrow. We're going cross country for the last of his college auditions. So we're hopscotching across the country to 4 or 5 different universities. I'm going to run into Murray Piper at Johns Hopkins. We're going to hang out there.
Hey, that's cool.
Really cool. Yeah. And Evan's going to, over the course of like 9 days, we're going to hit 5 cities, and he's going to do the last of his piano auditions. And then I just had an album come out, MoPhone. We just released our new album. It's sold out show, really great. And we're having another album release show in San Francisco at the beginning of March. So in a couple weeks. Super excited. That's it. That's my good stuff.
Wow.
Awesome, man. Awesome. Good for you.
Thank you.
And good for Evan. That's, man, proud papa.
Yeah, totally proud.
That's
totally
really
cool.
What's going on for you, Chip?
Hey, you know what? I got a student named Scarlett, and I met her when she's about 24 years old. And I met her, and she, learned how to hold the sticks, learned how to do quarter notes on the snare drum. I mean, basically from day one, I've been with, she's been taking lessons for about a year now. And she just got the gig at her church as the church drummer. And I'm so proud of her. She's doing great. She's just progressed, and one of those students that really pushes you to your limits. Every time she comes in, she's like, okay, what's next? I got this. What's next? So I'm really proud of her and happy about that. So she's now a church drummer. It's very cool.
Yeah, beautiful. Congratulations.
How cool is
Yeah,
that?
thank you. How about you, Rick? What's up, Rick?
Man, I am so happy. My volume 4 book, How to Build a Drum Groove, Mastering Triplets, is finally done, and it's at the printer.
Woo-hoo!
And this has been in the works for 12 years.
Wow.
I was writing it while I was doing my other books, but it's got everything under the sun triplet like in here. It's got shuffles, it's got blues, it's got jazzy stuff, it's got hip hop stuff. And so hopefully in a couple of weeks, we're going to have some copies of this. And so
Awesome.
about it. And I'm doing the nice spiral binding, spending the good more money, getting good spiral binding. And so
Spiral's the way to go. So much.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that finally completes your color coordinated book series: the red, blue, green, and now the yellow.
You are correct mostly, because that was the plan to do it in 4 books.
So it's totally a beach ball now.
Yeah, I realized I think I got 5. So
Sorry.
It's the 4th book in the trilogy.
yeah.
Yeah.
The 4th book of the trilogy. Wait a second.
Yeah.
Hold on. Pump the brakes.
No, man, yeah, I gotta.
Congratulations, Rick. That's really cool.
Yeah,
man.
that's awesome.
Really beautiful.
Dude.
Yeah, we're having fun, but yeah, man, that's a huge achievement. And your books, the first 3 books are so freaking amazing. Can't wait to pick up the 4th one.
Yeah.
I can't wait to get this out to all the teachers out there and all of our great supporters, and hopefully it's going to help some people get their shuffles together.
Yeah,
Nice.
So cool.
Get all these
So
groups
cool.
out, because I think the triplet grooves are the ones that people shy away from. I think everybody
Sometimes struggle with. Yeah.
yeah. We could have a whole episode talking about that.
Oh, we sure could. So, let's see. Where else are we? Oh, well, we're at episode 151. Bart, did you do your good thing?
No,
I'm just sitting here. I'm enjoying you, Rick. It's the Rick Show. I love you.
Thanks, Bart.
My good thing is it's Tuesday. I'm on Drummers Education Connection with my friends. Last week we had Billy Cobham on the show. That was phenomenal. That was a lot of fun. We have some of the biggest names in drumming on the show, and it's a real honor to be part of that. Last week, one of my drum students, Selena, you guys have met her. Selena Choi, she told me that she wanted to start branching out and start gigging, and so I was giving her advice on where to go, and all of a sudden she reaches out to me and she goes, "Hey, I went to this martial arts studio and I'm their drummer." And I'm like, "What are you martial arts studio, huh?" Well, she really wanted to get into her Asian culture and go back to her roots, because she was born here in America, but she wanted to learn more about Asian culture and what she is, where she comes from. So she went to this Kung Fu studio and got involved with the dragon or with the lion dance. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but it's something that they do every year at the Lunar New Year and the Chinese New Year. And she played cymbals, and they're kind of those Wuhan China cymbals. She played those in a couple of performances, and she's working her way up to playing the drum in this thing. It's just a big tom-tom basically, and they're played with these, they almost look like large clave sticks, but she's transcribing it. She's doing the whole thing, and she's just absolutely killing it. So having a student that's doing that good, and doing it on her own, wanting to reach out and find out more about her heritage and her culture is really cool. It's really cool. So I'm super proud of her. I'm just so proud of her. And it's always nice to see the student shine. It's always nice to see a student go do something and know that somewhere along the line you had something to do with that and making the world a better place. And I just love that.
Beautiful. Congrats. Congrats to your students.
Thank you.
Hey, but guys, before we start, do you want to? We have a collective good thing, right? Which is Deck Day.
Deck Day.
420.
Yeah. So for those of you unfamiliar, we had a couple years back our first Deck Day live clinic event. That was at the Aquarian Drumheads warehouse in Southern California, and it was a huge success. We had a massive turnout, sold out. 4 clinics, with one with each of us, and we had tons of giveaways and raffles from all our sponsoring companies. Well, we're planning our next one. It's happening April 20th here in the Bay Area. Tickets are on sale, and you can find out about it at drummersedcon.com, which will pop up in the chat.
I'll post the link in the comments to it.
Thank you. Yeah, so we're going to do a similar thing. It's going to be 4 different clinics / master classes with each of us. We're going to have a demonstration from Jason Slota, who's been on our show before, from Round Sound Cymbals. He's going to talk about how to choose cymbals and how to understand how cymbals sound different and how to pick them best for your setup. And Mike D'Amico from Brooks Drums is going to be there with some of his handmade snare drums and a couple of drum kits to show off, and he'll talk a little bit about how he makes drums. And it's going to be a great day. So come out. We'd love to see you guys out there.
And when you sign up for it, there is going to be a lot of giveaways too, just so everybody knows. I don't want to name anything yet, but all of our endorsers have pretty much, committed to being on board with the thing. And we're going to have some giveaways. We're going to have raffle prizes. We're going to have all kinds of just really, really, really cool stuff. So come out to Deck Day, hang out, It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be a great time.
Could win a date with Chip Ritter.
Oh, yeah.
You could. The dream date with Chip Ritter.
Yeah.
Right, Chip?
And if that's not what you were hoping for, you can trade it in for like maybe a stick bag or something.
I'm gonna bring this pair of used drumsticks.
Yeah.
So if you don't, yeah, I have some pencil shavings too. I'll give away.
Yeah. There's over 15 drum companies and drum gear companies that are sponsoring the event. So we're gonna have, like Bart said, a ton of stuff. You're gonna walk in, you're gonna get a goodie bag. It's gonna give you like $60 worth of stuff right off the bat, and then you get automatic entry into the raffle. I mean, you're gonna have a good day. It's gonna be fun. Come out.
It's going to be a blast. Plus 4 clinics with one clinic with each of us throughout the whole day. It's going to be a great time.
Yep.
I can't wait to see your clinics and learn from you guys.
Yeah. Likewise. So Chip, Rick, you sort of had the inspiration for today's show. You want to tell us what you had a conversation with a student?
Yeah, I had a student who sent me a text, a former student who sent me a text that he's going to get back into drumming, so that's exciting. And his text said, "I need to buy a drum set. What should I buy?" And that's a fair question. That's a great question, but it's such a broad question that it certainly is not a question that you can answer in a text. So I called him up and started, a conversation with him. And I thought it would be great to get everybody's insight and what they tell their students and what their thoughts are when a student asks that question. And right away, I always consider that the drum set is the most customizable instrument of all of them, right? A trumpet has 3 valves, right? A sax has so many finger positionings, guitar 6 strings. Drum set can go from this giant Neil Peart thing to kick, snare, and a floor tom, right? And so you've got to kind of decide what your style is and what music you like, and definitely make a kit surrounding that so you can move forward with that. And then I always just tell them too, you've got to kind of decide, how many drums do you want? What kind of finish do you want? Talk about depths of the drums. And then a lot of people don't know that a drum set is not just one thing, right? There's the drums, there's the cymbals, there's the stands. And so I thought we could kind of help people kind of sort through all of that. So Jeremy, what do you say when a student asks you about buying a kit? Like, what's your answer? Where do you begin?
Well, is this their first kit or is this an upgrade? That's my first question.
I think he sold his old kit, so he's starting off, and he's saying he wants to get a decent kit.
But my answer to your question is going to depend on, who the student is, what level they're at, and what is the sort of logical next step for them. So it's different for a beginner and that first drum set that you're going to buy versus someone who's going from the first kit to the upgrade kit. So I'll start with your student who's already had a kit before, but is kind of wanting to get back into it, but, looking to upgrade, let's say. There is a rank, first of all the drum companies make great drums. Let me just say that the technology has improved so much over the last 100 years. The wood's better, the laminating process is better, the hardware is more technologically advanced and sturdier, and things don't slip as much. So you kind of can't go wrong, with most of the name brands that you recognize. I do have my own personal favorites and the ones that I like and recommend, but I guess the first fork in the road is 4-piece or 5-piece, or particularly 6. For those of you who are unfamiliar, the pieces just refer to the number of the drums. It has nothing to do with the cymbals or the stands. So a 4-piece kit standard is kick, snare, rack tom, floor tom. A 5-piece kit adds that second middle rack tom. Although some people like to go what's called 1 up and 2 down. That's 1 rack tom up top and then 2 floor toms on the side, which is I think what Rick's got going on there.
Yep.
Usually people that want that kind of specialty, a little bit more unique setup, that's something they already know that they want. So if they're coming to me for advice, almost for sure, I'm going to recommend a 4 or 5-piece kit. And if they're strictly a jazz player, I might recommend a 4-piece kit. But if they're wanting to play rock and do different styles, I'm probably going to recommend a 5-piece kit.
I will tell you this. I've had so many, not to interrupt you, I've had so many drummers who find the perfect kit, but it's just a 4-piece kit. Like they love the finish, they love the price, but it's missing that tom. And I've seen some students go ahead and buy that drum set, and then we start working on charts because they love classic rock. And they all have 3 toms.
Right.
Like, so it's amazing how many songs, if you start going back to music, going back, if you want to play anything 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, so much of it I found is a 3-tom thing.
5-piece kit is true. Once Ringo switched from a 4-piece to a 5-piece, that kind of set the standard for everything that came afterwards. So all drum sets that were sold were 5-piece kits during most of them afterward, and most people played on them, or bigger professionals did. And so Rick's correct that if you're a classic rock person, or if you're a rock person, 5-piece kit's the way to go. And they're also still more common than the 4-piece, I find.
Yeah.
About
that, diving in a little bit more into that. For me, I like a mount on my bass drum. I like to be able to mount both toms on the bass drum. I don't want to have 2 separate stands for each tom, because I find that the stands can be wonky depending on the stages. You have to bring those extra stands. The stands have to be super heavy too, if they're going to accommodate both toms.
So what Rick's talking about, for those of you who are new to this, is that some rack toms mount onto a bracket that sits on the bass drum or in the bass drum,
right?
And then with a bracket that penetrates the shell of the bass drum, and then other ones have toms that are mounted on a clamp that holds onto a cymbal stand, or potentially even a snare drum stand. And the benefit of that is that you don't have a big bracket that's penetrating the shell of the bass drum. And the modern sort of philosophy that everybody more or less agrees on is that you want to penetrate the shell as little as possible, so as few screws as possible and no holes if you can manage it. But honestly, I haven't heard. I've done A/B tests with a bass drum that's got a bracket and a bass drum that is what we call a virgin bass drum that has no hole in it, and I can't tell the difference, to be totally honest with you.
I can't tell the difference at all, and I don't think anyone ever really could. And
yeah,
I think it's just one of those buzzwords. Oh man, get a virgin bass drum, and
right.
I think drums are, what somebody that's going to buy a drum set has to realize, that drums are like anything. There's trends to them. If you look at Modern Drummer magazine over the decades that it's been in print, I remember in the 90s and early 2000s, there was this whole trend of real shallow tom-toms, had shallow toms. And then in the 80s, everything was the polar opposite. It was big, deep toms. Look at pictures of Steve Smith, during the Frontiers days and the Escape days, those big toms that he played. Yeah, exactly. The big power toms, and they, were double head. Then you have, of course, you have concert toms where you used to have the single headed drums. I do think it is like Rick, you nailed it. I think the drum set is so incredibly customizable, when it more so than a lot of instruments. Guitar players will go nuts with, they'll get their guitar, but then they've got a bazillion pedals and amps, so everything's customizable. But with drums, it's so personal. It's such a personal. It's personal to your body size. For God's sake,
right.
The way that my kit is set up. Let's say Rick and I were going to play this same exact drum set, right? My touring kit is 1 up and 2 down, and there's a very specific reason I use 1 up and 2 down instead of 2 up, meaning 2 tom-toms on the top. But Rick's setup's going to be different than mine because of our height difference, and so you got to realize that. I tell a lot of my students when they're buying their first kit, if they're tall, because I run into this all the time, check your floor tom legs. You know, there are certain companies that their floor tom legs really aren't that long. And my floor tom legs, every time I sit behind a kit, my floor tom legs are all the way to the top. I've got to get that drum up there because I'm taller. You know, I want the drum up there. A lot of guys, the floor tom's way down close to the floor, and there's this much leg sticking out of the bottom of the floor tom. So check the floor tom legs. And that is if you want a floor tom, if you don't want suspended floor toms. There's so many different variables.
I would, along those lines, I would say, if at all possible, find a shop in your area, and it's worth taking an hour drive to get there.
Yeah.
Find a kit and set it up and play it.
Yeah.
Right. Just find it blind online. That's one of my biggest pieces of advice.
We had that conversation a few weeks ago about cymbals. You know, you can go online and listen to a cymbal all day long and you get the cymbal. Well, it doesn't sound like it did online. Right. Well, it's because it's in the room with you. It's not coming out of a little tiny speaker, you know. I mean, so yeah, definitely play the kit you want. You know, definitely, especially if we're talking about, but I mean, I'm assuming right now everything that we're talking about is buying a brand new kit. You know, we're not talking about buying used right now. That's not something we've touched on yet. But when you're buying a brand new kit, you know, go and make up your mind. You know, a lot of times you might be influenced by your drum teacher or by your favorite drummer, but when you sit down and play that drum kit, is that the sound that you want, and is that the feel you want? You know?
Yeah,
you want, and the look. I always tell my students, start off looking and getting Modern Drummer, get Modern Drummer magazine, get the Sweetwater catalog, start going on all of the different manufacturers' websites, and kind of decide what kind of finish that really resonates with you. I feel it's so important to just really love the look of it and make it your identity. So you could narrow it down. Do I have wood finishes, like natural wood finishes, like that pine or mahogany look, or the wraps, like the silver sparkle, the kit behind me, or the pearl or diamond wraps, or then there's acrylic drums, like the kit over there.
Don't buy acrylic drums. Sorry.
You know, and here's to you know, make your point, Rick. I always say that the drum set is the centerpiece or the hood ornament of the stage. You walk in and you look at the stage and there's all these instruments, but the drum set is like, what's he playing? And I know a lot of that. I'm biased. I'm a drummer, you know. And I agree with Jeremy. I have an acrylic drum set. It looks great. Looks really cool.
Well, it's also kind of a unique sound, and it's not what most drums sound like. So, like, if this is your first kit or your only kit, definitely don't buy an acrylic drum set.
Yeah, and because if you do want to record it, you're recording a chunk of plastic, and it sounds like a chunk of plastic. I mean, it may look great under the lights, and it's fun and everything to look at, but you know, when you get into a real working scenario, right? When you put mics on the kit in a studio, a lot of times if you go into a studio anymore, they have a kit there for you to play. That's a whole other subject. But you bring in an acrylic drum set and you mic that thing up, no bueno.
Yeah. So your decisions you need to make, or you need to start focusing in on, are how many pieces, right? Usually it's going to be 4 or 5 for your standard set.
Right.
What type of wood?
Right. So we should talk about the different woods. So, you know, why we were bagging a little on acrylic is the acrylic is a little pingy. And they tend to be very, very loud. So that might not be the right sound for you. I do a lot of work with DJs, and it just kind of works with playing with DJs. It just sort of cuts through nicely, and the look is just right. But different wood characteristics, you know, different types of wood have different tones. And when you say maple is kind of like the overall #1 main one that's used.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Maple and birch are the 2 most commonly used woods.
And what I found with birch is, again, back to the studio thing. I've got a few drum sets, and I've got a birch kit, and it's a very nice drum set, and I've taken it in to record, and man, it just doesn't I mean, and I'm talking like with a really good producer with really good mics and preamps, and the kit just didn't, it was just dead. It was just bleh, you know, but you take in a maple kit, and that was my experience. You know, I took it every time I've taken a maple kit into the studio, you throw some mics at it and you sit down and you play it, you know.
Well, let's not forget also that a huge part of how the drums sound is the heads and the tuning.
Yeah.
Chip, can't see who it was that put that comment on it. Was that Fred about I help my students understand tuning and setup? So the heads
it's Fred.
Yeah. Fred mentioned that whatever they get, he helps his students understand tuning and setup. And of course that's critical because, you know, when students are buying their first kit, they don't know how to set it up. They don't know how to tune it. They don't put the toms in the wrong order and they're all askew and all that. So we'll get to that in a sec, but, heads, you know, make more of a difference than the wood. I would even go so far as to say.
I would agree with that. I would completely agree with that.
Yeah. So it's certainly true that maple has some different tonal characteristics from birch, which has some slightly different tonal characteristics from, you know, bubinga and ash and oak and all the other, you know, lesser used woods that they make drum sets out of. There's mahogany and poplar.
Yeah. By the way, oak are loud as could be. I had a student who bought an oak kit, and it's too loud. It's just,
it's true. It's true. There are differences. But you know, maple is a really, really solid choice. I pretty much recommend maple to all my students. And from there, the heads that you choose can completely change the way the drum set sounds.
Yeah.
Gretsch drums, you know, Gretsch uses cuts the bearing edges at a different angle than most standard bearing edges. So the bearing edge is the edge of the drum that actually contacts the head at the very top of it. And Gretsch tends to cut them at 30 degrees angle versus 45, and that gives it a kind of a quieter, warmer sound. So Gretsch has that characteristic about most of their drums. Is that accurate to say, Bart?
Yeah, yes. And this is the bearing edge. I think you can see it right there where the head sits on the drum. And yeah, it is 30 degrees. And
that's got a slightly different sound.
They also do, and again, I mean, this is a discussion that could just go on for episode after episode. There's the Brooklyn series kit is a reverse bearing edge, so that bearing edge goes outwards instead of inwards, and that's a completely different sound, you know.
Yeah.
You know, so
but if you've narrowed it down to maple or birch, you kind of can't go wrong, in my opinion. Although I'm a fan and believer in maple. That's my choice. Sounds like that's Bart's choice as well. Rick and Chip, is that where you guys land as well?
Well, Chip's in a totally different camp.
As far as wooden drum sets, maple. I agree with you guys, and I'm learning a lot by listening to you guys. You know, when it comes to buying your first drum set, that my thinking is like you guys have said, and all I could maybe add on top of that would be do your research. Spend your time, do the Googling, do the asking, ask drummers what they play, what they like about what they're playing, and why. And make sure you understand the difference between, you know, a shell pack and a complete drum set.
What's the difference, Chip?
Yeah, well, a shell pack is just the drums themselves. It's no cymbals or hardware for the feet and stuff. It's just the drums, the shells themselves. And then, you know, a complete drum set would be the one in the picture. Sometimes they have a picture for sale on a website of a drum set with the cymbals and everything. And then in the tiny print, it'll be like no cymbals included or whatever, right?
No cymbal stands included sometimes.
Shell pack, you know.
So to be clear, a shell pack comes with it does come with the legs for the floor tom.
Yeah.
And sometimes it will come with the bracket to mount the toms, and sometimes it won't. Usually
the brackets, like Rick was saying, if it's mounted on the bass drum, it usually will. But if it's if it's a virgin bass drum, like we were talking about, or you guys were talking about, nothing.
So, you know. and while we're talking about this, you guys who are listening, we'd love to hear what kind of drum sets you're playing, what woods you prefer, and we'll get into head setups in a minute. But I'm gonna keep those comments coming.
I did want to mention mahogany wood. I have a Pearl Masters custom mahogany set. That's the student kit, and it is so warm. The sound is it's just tonal and just kind of beefy sound. It may not have that same attack as the maple, but I
Right.
think every drummer should like play one of those sets, like you said, go to the store and listen and just listen to what resonates with you.
So the cheaper drum kits are going to be made usually of basswood or poplar, and then mahogany is kind of a middle ground, and then generally that next tier up is going to be birch and maple, or
Right.
Birch can be on a little bit cheaper side too. So part of that is not just that the wood is better and therefore it's more expensive. Part of that is that the wood is, more expensive to harvest, or as lumber prices go, not all woods are equally expensive. So don't necessarily think that because you're getting a different wood or a cheaper kit that it's necessarily, not as good. Another factor there, of course, is the hardware and the construction. How much of it is done by hand, how much attention to detail versus how much is done just by an assembly line machine thing.
Yeah,
right on.
And the hardware is another big factor to me. Like not just the stands, but even just like the hoops and the lugs and the adjustability of the toms and the tom bracket. Back in the day when I was growing up, Pearl made these, or all the companies had these arms that were these elbows, right? And they could turn this way and tilt this way, and that was it. And now almost every company's got a ball and socket, which gives you much more ease of positioning, and you can, you loosen, you move it, and you tighten, and then it's anywhere you want it to be. And then also most companies nowadays, even on their student level kits, have tom holders that don't penetrate the tom shelf. Again, that what we talked about. That
like a rims mounting system or something like that.
Right.
Even
that's worth looking for. Yeah, Chip.
Yeah, guys, I was just going to chime in here and say that James B. Harrison, thanks for watching, James. He says, when a parent is buying for a younger student, I encourage name brand beginner or intermediate set package deals or used. For a seasoned player or someone who's returning to playing, I encourage evaluating your budget and imagine that it's going to be the last drum set you purchase that you get. So get exactly what you want. That's a good comment.
Nailed it. Nailed it. Yeah. I agree.
I do for my
kit. Get what you're gonna love and get you so fired up that you just want to play on the drums.
Yeah. Right.
The better they sound, the more you want to practice.
Right.
Yeah. The bottom line is, are you going to practice on an instrument that doesn't sound great? Probably not.
Right. Or if you're, I have students who are buying these nice kits and they're like, well, they didn't have the color I wanted in stock, and it's going to be 6 weeks that I have to wait to get it. So I might just get the black one instead. I'm not that excited about black, but it doesn't really matter. And I'm like, you know what? If this is the
kind of
buying for the rest of your life, why would you not wait 6 weeks and get the thing you're going to love and walk by it and just feel super excited about it? Get the finish.
Yeah,
really.
Get everything that resonates with you, literally and figuratively.
Totally true. One thing I want to point out too, and this is definitely to the more seasoned player or student, and we've been talking shell packages and everything, and like James just said, consider your budget. And let's say you're returning to drumming, or this is the kit that's going to be like your kit that you're going to have for years and take to gigs and stuff. I'd be remiss we would be remiss if we didn't point out snare drums will change the entire kit, right? So if you're playing a maple kit or a birch kit or a babinga kit, whatever you're playing, the snare drum is going to, I go into the studio and swap out the snare drum, and you put on a different drum and you got a completely different drum set. So this throws another another little factor in there. This snare drum right here is a Supraphonic. I'm a Gretsch guy, been with Gretsch for years. But my go-tos in the studio, I've got a couple of amazing Gretsch snare drums. However, the Superphonic is considered the most recorded snare drum in history. And I'm sure that Slingerland has something to say about that with the Radio King, but the Superphonic is awesome. A Black Beauty. You can't go wrong. So if you're returning to drumming, you're going back, you're buying your kit, check on some snare drums that you like to play, some different snare drums. Play, do I want a wooden snare drum? Do I want a metal snare drum? Do I want a brass snare drum? Do I want stainless steel? Do I want one of each? Again,
Yes.
back to, what's your budget? What can you afford? What do you want to spend?
Bart brings up an important point, which is that it's really, really common to have different snare drums from the kit. So don't be afraid to have a different brand snare drum. I also play, I have multiple snares, but I have a Ludwig Black Beauty on my Brooks kit and on my Yamaha kit. And when you buy the kit, you don't have to buy the snare drum with it.
Right.
A lot of times, in my opinion, the snare drum that comes with the kit is the weakest link. So you can get yourself a really good deal on a shell pack with your rack drum and bass drum. Don't buy the snare drum that comes with it. Instead, buy a different snare, maybe a couple $100 more, but you're going to be really happy that you did it.
And that's great advice, because and even let's say in the entry level kits, right? If you get like again, I'm a Gretsch guy. The Gretsch, the Catalina series are great drums, but where they always, I have two Catalina kits, and I've played them at gigs. Never recorded with them, but played them at gigs before. They're great drums. But where they cut their corners cost-wise is in the snare drums, and maybe not as good a bass drum spurs or what have you. But if you put a good snare drum on that, you're a student, first-time buyer, brand new student, been playing for 5 years or 3 years, and you're buying your first drum set, your upgrade kit for a young kid. Get a better snare drum. Get the kit that you want, but get the better snare drum, and it'll change the entire kit.
I often recommend to my students to buy a new drum set, like James was mentioning, a name brand, Pearl, Atama, Yamaha, and buy a used snare, because you can get a really good deal on a used snare that's a much higher quality drum than the new one that's going to come with the kit. And it's
that reminds me. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Chip.
That reminds me of going all the way back to the very beginning of the question. How do you buy your drum set? If it's a first-time purchase for somebody, sometimes if you're looking at Facebook Marketplace and you're open to playing something that's used, you can find great deals on drum sets that people are trying to get rid of that have really good cymbals included as well.
Yeah.
So you never know what you may find. And it's another reason to keep looking and get out there and research.
So if you're new to this and you're going to buy a used kit, absolutely run it by your teacher first.
Yeah.
If you don't have a teacher, call a drum teacher randomly and say, "Hey, I know I don't take lessons with you, but I'm thinking about buying this kit. Would you mind giving me some advice?" I would be happy to give advice on the phone.
I will too. Yep.
I'm getting texts, and it's Craigslist stuff. And 20. Do your research first, though. Really start understanding all of these before you just find a kit on Craigslist and go, what about that one? What about that one? What about that one? I've had some students who are like, they're blowing up my phone and they're like 10 kits. I'm like, don't get that. Don't get that. Don't get that. Don't get that. Learn a little bit about it. You have to consider that buying a drum kit is a lot like buying a car. And don't just think, hey, what do I buy? There's all kinds of manufacturers and there's all kinds of levels. So maybe set a budget to start is not a bad idea. And then consider that you can always build up as you go, kind of as a reward for your playing.
Yeah. And if you do get a used kit, and see, Rick, I think all of us go through that. What about this? What about this? And it might be like a complete entry level piece of junk. And so you do spend a lot of time, don't buy that, don't buy that. Yeah. Sometimes you have to explain it. But if you do have a student that comes across like, the diamond in the rough, if you will, and they find a good kit. Let's say they find a nice Pearl export that's in great shape. It's been around for a while, but it's in good shape, and it's got some okay heads on it. You can change out the heads, but like Chip said, it's got, a couple of okay crash cymbals, but man, it's got a really good ride cymbal, a halfway decent snare drum, and it's got a DW 5000 double bass pedal with it, and a whole bunch of drumsticks and the books that they used to study out of, and a stick bag and a drum rug. And you get a lot of stuff, you know, I mean, because a lot of times when people are getting out, they're selling a drum set, it's because I took lessons for years, or this thing's been in the garage forever, and you can find some good deals, but you like everybody has said, you got to do your research. You've got to kind of know what you're looking for, and if you do find a great deal on a used kit, you can pick up some really good stuff to go along with that kit, you know.
Yeah, that's why it's really important to ask questions. Talk to people. Call, like Jeremy has a great idea. If you don't have a drum teacher, call a drum teacher and ask them their advice. They would be drummers more than any other musicians are more willing to help each other than most other people, especially when it comes to gear.
Right.
Yeah. I find that these conversations, when someone's considering what to buy, can last a very, very long time. And that is definitely part of a drum lesson. And lesson is a drum set consultation. And I know they're paying for that hour, but I've had countless numbers of people say, thank God we did that consultation.
Right.
Because that gave me hundreds and hundreds, even up to thousands of dollars when you start adding up.
Just like you said about the drum sets are kind of like buying a car. Once you buy a new drum set, once it comes off the lot, that value goes down as far as the retail value.
Yeah,
good point. You want to be happy with what you get.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is right. It's not a problem if you love it and you're going to be using it. But if you're not happy with it and you sell it, you're going to lose some value for sure. Yeah. So, hey guys, I've got a question to pose to you, and I thought this could be kind of fun. If you had $1,000 and you had to buy a new kit, brand new student, you know, let's say beginner or, you know, advanced beginner, whatever. Drums only, no cymbals. What do you recommend?
Pearl Roadshow.
Rick.
Solid hardware, sounds great. It's my student kit, my choice for my student kit, and the hardware's solid. The drums sing. It's a great, fantastic kit, and Sweetwater has them for $659.
Wow. I'm gonna go with the Pearl Export. I'm not sure where the Roadshow lines up with the Export. I think the Export might be a little bit more money, but man, I've played a million Exports. Probably all of us have been on a gig where backline was supplied, and it's a Pearl Export.
Yeah.
And put some Aquarian heads on it. Man, I think you can make a Pearl Export just sing.
Bart?
You can put some Aquarian heads on a cardboard box and do a gig.
Chip Ritter for president.
They don't make square heads is the problem.
Yeah, you're right.
Not yet.
Not yet. We'll talk to Chris, see what he can come up with. I would go with
dead on, by the way.
Rick is what?
Rick is dead on, by the way. The Pearl Export, you can get one for $1,000 at Sweetwater.
Yeah.
Oh, right on.
Depending on the sales in Sweetwater and where you're going, I would go with either the Gretsch Catalina series. You can get those for about $700-ish, depending, and they usually will throw in an extra tom. So you get 3 toms instead of, or 4 toms instead of 3. And a step up from that, again, depending on sale prices, would be a Renown series. And I've got 2 Renown kits, and they're, a matter of fact, these 2 tom-toms are, you won't get them at that price point, but they're the Renown Purewood series. They're walnut, and that's why I have them in here for recording. They sound amazing. So yeah, the Gretsch stuff is really good. Being a Gretsch guy, to me, they've always been the Rolls Royce of drums. I do, though, I think that the Pearl Export, and I think you guys might know this, is the best-selling drum set of all time. Is that correct?
Of all time.
I mean, they've sold literally boatloads of those things. I mean, there are so many Pearl Exports out there, and Rick, you're right. there's been many a nights where it's like, oh, okay, I'm playing an export kit,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
because it's backlined, they're readily available, and the hardware's good, everything's great about them.
It's $1,000 kit that pros will use out in clubs all the time.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And
Yep.
and again, I think it does come down to a couple of things. Number one, Jeremy at the top of the show nailed it. 90% of the sound of the drum is the head. It just is. And so the drum of your choice is usually, it creates a lot of sound as well. I mean, obviously that is a big part of it, but the head has a lot to do with it. So Pearl, Gretsch, what about you, Jeremy? What would you suggest?
I do like the Pearl Export. I used to recommend that a lot. That's always a solid, can't go wrong option. I like the Yamaha Stage Custom.
Oh, those are good. Yeah.
Custom.
And I like the Sonor AQ2 as well. Maple, yeah, good value, really good value. All those kits are drum sets that a beginner will be happy with, that are going to last, they're going to hold up, they're going to sound really good if you tune them up right, and you're not going to beat it into submission in 5 years.
Right.
What you want to avoid is the off-brand stuff, or a lot of the stuff that's made overseas, sort of copycat stuff that just doesn't hold up. The hardware breaks and bends, and the bearing edges get all rough, and it's no good. So stick with the name brand.
I think, Jeremy, you hit the nail on the head that, folks, you can beat a drum kit into submission.
Yeah.
If you want to get that $400 or $500 kit and from some weird maker, or the real entry level kind of kid kit, keep in mind, like we've said, every manufacturer makes their entry level, their mid level, and their high level pretty much. So the lugs can start loosening. The kit might not sound that good. The heads will help, but man, if it's a toy, it's a toy.
You're right. You just took the word out of my mouth, the toy, because that's what a lot of them are. Now, I have to say this, and I think you guys will agree with this. I remember when I was coming up, like if you either there was two different kinds of kits. There was the really good name brand pro kits, and then there was the piece of junk. there was no middle ground,
Yeah.
Nowadays, I mean,
these days there are lots more options.
Totally. And the entry level kits, an entry level Pearl, Gretsch, Ludwig, Sonar, you name the brand, their entry level kits, you would see any one of us or a lot of the people watching, oh yeah, I'd play that at a gig. I mean, they're great drums. They're just better made. I want to circle back around to something that I think Fred said in one of the comments, Fred Fisher. He was talking about how he helps his students set up and tune their kits and tweak them in. I just did a setup and tuning. I call it a tech and tune. It was something that I was doing for Gretsch for a little while. Do you guys do that? Do you guys go over to a student's house, get them set up and tweaked in with heads, and show them how to tune it and set it up for them? Do you guys do that?
Yeah, I'll take some drum keys and some sky gels out to a student's house and make a house call in my drum dial, and we tune it up and get it all set up for them. I absolutely do that.
Some drum keys, some sky gels, a nice bottle of Merlot.
There you go. Sounds like a dream date with Chip Ritter.
Yeah, I do that too, because I also realized during COVID, when I started having all these online lessons, that so many of my students had their drum kits set up and tuned awfully.
Yeah,
I was like, oh, I need to come over. So when students buy a new kit, especially if they're beginners, I'll go over and we'll also almost across the board, we will replace the heads that the drum set came with.
Yep.
So whatever you think you're paying for your entry level drum kit, add another $100 or so for a set of batter heads, and you'll be so glad you did. It's like putting new guitar strings on a guitar. so they don't know how to put the heads on, so we'll use it as part of a teaching opportunity to show them how to do it, and then we'll do a kind of a tuning. Now, tuning can take a long time, and to teach people to tune can take a long time. So it's kind of a quick and dirty, just get them set up and give them the basics idea. And then sometimes we'll have another full lesson on tuning.
Tuning is an art form. It takes time to really learn how to control the sound of a drum if you're new. So it's very important too. It's a very important skill to learn.
Unlike a guitar, if you're, we can talk about detuning a guitar and tuning to open chords, but a guitar is either in tune or it's out of tune. A piano is in tune or it's out of tune. Right. Drums, you can take two of the same drum with two of the same drum heads with a drum dial and tune them exactly the same. And sometimes you'll get a different tone because a drum, the way I always put it, kind of has its happy place. It's like, okay, this is where this drum sounds and feels best, and sometimes I think the student has to experience that for themselves. Would you not agree?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
I used to, and I occasionally, every once in a while, will go to somebody's house, but it's been pretty rare because the schedule is busy. And what I've had a lot of luck with is just bring your drum set here to my studio.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to tune it up in here, and then
or bring a tom in, and we'll work on the tom.
Yeah, well, exactly, Chip. Sometimes I'm like, just bring 3 toms in, and we'll play around with that.
Right.
And then we can compare it. I've got 3 kits set up here, so we can compare their tuning to the tunings on of my kits. And then you get, yeah, man, but I don't know how to tear down the drum set. And I'm like, exactly. You need to learn. You're going to be a drummer. You need to know how to take hi-hat off of the stand, fold up the stand, and bring it. So how about you tear that thing down and figure out how to move it around? A drum kit isn't supposed to be sitting in a living room, I feel.
Did you guys just see what happened?
What happened?
The positive energy hand grenade strikes again. that was pure joy that came out of Rick right there. He was, all day he's been sitting there kind of quiet, and he just beamed. I loved that. That was awesome. That's great. You're right, though, Rick. You're right, man. I mean, because a lot of times people don't, and that's why I call it a tech and tune. You're kind of showing them how to tweak it in. But you're right. The student has to know how to take the hi-hat apart. They have to know how. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a trial run, man. It's like taking that car out for the test drive. Same thing. Yeah.
Right.
Shout out to Peter Retzlaff. Thanks for watching, Peter.
Hey, Pete, what's up, man?
Peter, how are you, buddy?
So to recap a little bit, your first decision is how many pieces are you going to buy? How many pieces of a drum kit do you want? 4 or 5 or something custom? Right. Then you're going to decide on your dimensions, right? Do you want 10, 12, 14, 22, 10, 12, 13, 16, 20, bass drum, 20 or 22, right? That's a big fork in the road, or maybe even 18 if you're a jazz player, you're playing really quiet, or if you're really short.
Hey, what about a 24? What's wrong with you, Jeremy?
Well, I mean, that's just, those are custom orders, right? Special order for 24. So the standards are 22 and 20 and 18. 18 tends to be more for jazz players and really quiet or really short people, but
or a 36 Tommy Lee.
I'm offended.
Right. You know why 18-inch bass drums became popular in the jazz era, right? Because 22s were just too big to carry.
Right.
Yeah. And they had to take them in the taxi cab.
Exactly. So
yeah.
So you're picking your shell number of drums, shell dimensions, wood, finish, and then heads. Right. We've done episodes on heads. We can't get into that now, but that's going to be a huge determining factor on your sound is what heads you choose and how you tune them up.
Yeah.
And then you've got to figure out the cymbals, which we might be due for a cymbal episode.
Sure. We can do that again. And then cases, you're going to need cases as soon as you start taking them the first case.
Yes.
Protect them.
Look, okay, your question of $1,000, right? You had $1,000 to spend on the kit. You spend $1,000. You spend $999.99 on this drum set. You just spent everything, and now you're just going to throw it in and out of the car to take it to gigs. No, that's an investment. At the very least, get gig bags, but definitely get cases. Get cases.
Yeah.
Get cases.
We could do a whole episode on cases. We'll talk about that another time.
Now,
Yes.
here's another thing that people should consider if they're just kind of getting started with this, and this all sounds really expensive. Look in your hometown and see if there's a rehearsal studio that has drum sets set up and you can go rehearse hourly. And that way you're getting the experience of playing on acoustic drums, and starting to know the drum sets and see what resonates for you. That way you're kind of building up to this. So, and if you have to, get an electronic kit for $500 at home and then go to a rehearsal studio. And that's been a really nice pathway for a lot of my students. And then as time goes by, they're like, okay, I'm ready to spend that $1,500, that $2,000, because there's a lot of workmanship in a great drum set, and they do cost a lot of money, and it's worth it, because I think you're going to be so happy. I've never seen anyone who wasn't happy who spent the money, because it inspired them. They sounded better, and the stuff lasts too.
Yeah.
And like a car, you can always sell it and get a different one.
Right. That's true.
But ideally you're getting what you want. And ask your drum teacher, remember, whatever the price is, it's going to cost more, because there's tax, there's new heads that you're going to probably need to get, there's cymbals, potentially hardware, cases. So you got to factor all that in when you're budgeting for your entire kit.
Yes.
And it doesn't all need to be happening at once, but you do need, if you're going to get drums, and you're not planning on moving them around because you're just not playing any bands yet for a while, that's okay. Cases can wait. Get your drums and your hardware and get some cymbals, and then you're on your way. Then start practicing.
And then you're going to need a Ford F-350 turbo diesel to carry all this crap around in. So you need to. So it gets really expensive.
We should have an episode on transport, like gig transport. So like
I'm in.
Dolly and push carts and wheels and cases with wheels.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Don't forget that Google is your friend.
Yes.
Yeah.
Research.
That's true. This is true.
If you're listening to this episode now or later, and you want to buy your first drum set and you're not sure and you don't have a drum teacher, just hit us up. We'll help you out.
Yeah, we'll help.
Direct message us.
Yeah, we'll help.
All right. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I know we kind of feel like we just got started. It's like we could talk about this. We could geek out on this stuff for hours and hours.
We really could.
Hopefully this was of some use to you and was helpful a little bit. Feel free to comment, with more questions after the fact, or things you'd like to see us talk about, or the drums that you like to play and all that stuff. And we'll see you next week. And don't forget, Deck Day is April 20th here in the Bay Area. It's going to be in San Rafael at the Bandwork Studios. 4 drum clinics, cymbal workshop, presentation from Jason Slota and Mike D'Amico. Lots of giveaways from our sponsors and tons of raffle prizes. So put the link back in the comments again.
Absolutely.
Is playing gigs the night before. His son's playing the night of, and then Jeremy's got a gig the night after, all in the same area, kind of the Berkeley area, right, Jeremy?
Yeah. I've got a gig the night before Deck Day, and then my son's got a gig that night after this clinic, and then I got a gig the next day. So it'll be a whole weekend of hanging and music and having a good time. So come join us.
We're gonna go the night before and go, yeah, Jeremy, like that. It's gonna be awesome.
You're gonna learn all the words to my band's songs and sing them.
You're gonna be sitting in the front with a cigarette lighter.
Yeah,
exactly.
You guys are all gonna sit in on Friday night. You're all gonna come and sit in. You can play a tune.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
Cool. Excellent.
I can fit in if I'm not too busy with my dream date.
Yeah, well,
that's true.
I'll understand if you're on your dream date.
Yeah.
I see you in the corner with some drum keys and some a bottle of wine and some heads.
Sky drills.
I know not to say anything. Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
Guys, thank you so much. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Great show. Thanks, guys.
Yep. We'll see you.
Play us out, Rick.
Oh,